Love and Monsters, a movie set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland about a man trying to get to a girl that he loves, and there's monsters everywhere. What's not to like? So Love and Monsters just came out on Netflix, and it certainly caught my eye because the trailer looked very interesting, and a new sci-fi film is always going to catch my eye. So as I mentioned, the movie is set in a post-apocalyptic world where 95% of the population of the planet has been eliminated by monsters. But check out this clip from the very start of the film, the intro to the actual film, to tell you exactly what this movie is all about.
I didn't really have your typical upbringing. I mean, I did at first, but then the world ended. I mean, I don't think anyone was really shocked. We always thought it might, and then it just finally happened. But how it happened, now that's where it gets interesting. Agatha 616. Yep, an asteroid, heading straight for Earth. I know, so obvious. So humanity came together and we did what we do best. We shot a bunch of rockets at it, and we blew it up, and it was great. But it wasn't. You see, the thing that makes rockets, chemical compounds, a lot of them, which rained back down on us and everything changed. And by everything, I mean cold-blooded creatures. And by changed, I mean mutated and started eating us to death. Ants, lizards, roaches, crocodiles, you name it, there's a lot of them. Actually, I knew this one kid who was eaten in his sleep by a goldfish he won at a carnival. Man, Todd loved that goldfish. And that cat. So for most of human history, if you wanted to kill a cockroach, right, all you needed was a shoe. Well, suddenly you needed a shotgun. And sometimes even a tank. And sometimes even that doesn't work. Especially if you don't stay in the tank, Bob. Eventually, the really big ones in our military took each other out. We lost 95% of the human population in about a year. It's a lot of Bobs and a lot of Todds. Those of us who survived, we hid anywhere we could. Bunkers, caves, panic rooms, all around the world. So for the last 7 years, I've been living in an underground bunker. And it's not as bad as it sounds, really. It's a great group of people, and we all love each other. You know, it's kind of what I imagined college would have been like.
So that little animatic animation thing at the start of the movie really set the tone for the film. Now, the core of the movie is a very basic idea, similar to News of the World or even Midnight Sky or something like that that's happened in recent years. This is a journey movie. By a journey movie, I mean there's a main character who has to get to someone they love or something they love, or they have to return something to someone or return a ring to a mountain. The main character has an end goal. They have to get from point A to point B, and there's going to be struggles along the way. And usually in these movies, what happens is the protagonist gets to their goal, and then their goal isn't quite what they expected. There's always some snag at the end, and that's pretty much what happens in this movie. But the main thing that sets this movie apart is the setting, the world of the monsters, and I think it's the creature creation in this one that sets this movie apart. Because without the creatures and that setting, it's a very bland, basic movie. Kind of what I said about News of the World. While it was fine, visually very good, some good acting from Tom Hanks, but the overall story was very basic. It's a basic journey movie. Get from point A to point B, doesn't quite work out, so the protagonist has to do plan C, I guess. This movie is very much the same. The protagonist wants to get to a different settlement camp where his girlfriend is, or a girl who's been in love with for 7 years. They got split up when the monsters arrived, and then he wants to get to her so they can be together. And she talks to him on the radio and everything, and they both want to meet up, but when he gets there, it's not quite what he expected. But our protagonist is Joel, a man who freezes under pressure. The man who's kind of the weak link of his camp. Whenever there's a monster to be dealt with, he freezes and is more of a liability than anything else. So for him to set out on an 85-mile long journey to get to the girl that he loves, they set up pretty well that it's a big struggle for this guy. But as I mentioned, it's the world set around the movie, the setting of the movie that sets this one apart from other journey movies. It has something unique about it. And I gotta say, the creature creation overall was pretty good. The whole idea is that creatures on Earth, basic creatures, bugs you have in your house, somehow mutated into these giant creatures. So while a lot of the creatures look like monsters, they're also creatures we're kind of familiar with. Like there's a giant snail, which is a really freaky looking thing. There's a frog that tries to kill Joel at some point, comes out of a pool, and he's just like a giant toad frog thing. But overall, I thought the setting was really cool. What it really reminded me of was something like a Fallout video game. It's probably the closest we've seen to like a Fallout video game in terms of there being these big giant creatures set in a post-apocalyptic world. There's even a robot that he talks to halfway through.
Oh, look! Sky jellies. They're harmless and quite lovely.
Wow.
That's definitely the first thing that sprung to mind with it. As I say, the story overall is kind of basic. It's nothing too unique, but this movie was a lot of fun because, as I say, the setting, the monsters, the fights with the monsters, and I gotta say, overall, I really enjoyed the movie. Even in terms of the Fallout thing, he has a dog companion. That's a thing that happens in Fallout as well. You can kind of tell that the filmmakers here really liked that video game and it took a lot of inspiration from the Fallout video games, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, although there's still yet to be a good video game movie at the time of recording this. Mortal Kombat comes out this week, so we'll see what happens. So along Joel's journey to get to his girlfriend, he encounters various monsters throughout the way. He also encounters people who help him out throughout the way, give him advice, train him up a little bit. A little girl and an older guy who are traveling together, who seem to know what they're doing. They show him a lot of what to do. He creates a book as he goes, and ultimately that book is what he uses to send out to other colonies so that they can begin to get out in the world and live their lives. He's written down what weaknesses monsters have, what plants not to eat, because everything's become irradiated. So overall, as I say, the story is a little bit basic. You can probably see it coming a mile off that, you know, he's going to do this journey, he gets to the girl, and it doesn't quite work out the way he expected, but then they have this big heroic moment at the end, and then they like each other again, but Joel has to go back to his original camp because he's worried about the people back there, the people who are basically his new family. Joel starts out as one of the weakest members of his camp, and by the end he's one of the strongest members of his camp with all the experiences he has. So he's got a bit of character growth in there. The setting around the world, the monsters, that's what sets this movie apart and actually makes it quite enjoyable. The visuals on the movie were pretty solid, weren't quite blockbuster level, but you can see there's a lot of work gone into the creation of it. Every time they walk around a different setting, just do like a wide shot in the distance, you can see some other monster, and they really do a good job of driving home how apocalyptic the world is and that there's these giant monsters everywhere. For example, at one stage they show like a wide scene where Joel's walking and there's a mountain in the background and you can see these giant spiders on the mountain, which is just freaky. And almost every shot there's like a hidden little insect around a corner that Joel doesn't see that the audience sees. They do a really good job of really setting the tone of the movie and really showing how bad the world is, how there's something around every little corner. But overall, Joel's journey, he encounters some monsters, he has his challenges, but overcomes everything pretty easily. His journey isn't too difficult in the end, although he does have some challenges. The movie isn't too long either, it's under 2 hours. I think it's 1:40, around that. The pacing is pretty good, slows down a little bit in the middle, but it was quite an enjoyable movie overall. I don't think this is a movie that's going to stand the test of time. I don't think you're going to watch it a million times over, but I think you will get an enjoyment out of it watching it just the once. So I'm going to give Love and Monsters a 7 out of 10, a solid, enjoyable movie that I'd highly recommend checking out. But this is where I throw it over to you guys. I want to know your opinions on Love and Monsters. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Which was your favorite monster? And what would you do if you lived in a world like that? I'd probably just stay in the bunker and just stay there forever. Just never come out. So if you enjoyed this review, I'd really appreciate if you shared this with anyone you know that loves movies to help our little channel grow. That would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to check out another video on the channel, we should have one right over here for you to check out. But with all that said and done, thank you so much for watching.